It doesn't look like no ambulance, so I don't know the name.
I've been watching the games.
Jessica said she saw that
That was my
accident.
guess. But
Keep it, okay.
clock is still slow.
Would a stoplight have stopped there?
I don't know. Maybe some more vigilant and less.
Crosswalk signs, would that help?
All right, we're going to call the meeting to order. Thank you all for being here. If the clerk would call the roll.
Councilmembers Walsh.
Here.
Hughes. Jones. Edbert. Engstrand.
Yep.
Have a full council. Will you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
right into the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the last council meeting on April 26th?
Move to approve.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? One abstention. Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Moving on to item 3, adoption of the agenda. Does anyone have any amendments or additions or changes to that? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adopting the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have an agenda. Moving on to item 4, consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
A second. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The consent agenda is approved. All right, getting right into item 5, visitors and presentations. We have Market Fest and Manitou Days presentations and a resolution authorizing financial participation. I understand we have someone here to present on that. Who's coming forward? Dale, step up.
Mayor, I'm Dale Grambush. I'm a resident of White Bear Lake and also have a business in downtown. Thank you for this time to give a short presentation. Council and staff, thank you. So as I said, I'm Dale Grambush. I've been the Market Fest chair since 2006, and last year I was the co-chair of Market Fest. Important decision. Last year when we met via Zoom, we really weren't sure what Market Fest was going to look like for 2021. Thankfully, the board had faith in what we could accomplish, so we really had 3 ideas. Of course, no Market Fest, scaled down Market Fest, or not sure what we would do Market Fest. We ended up changing the dates, starting Market Fest on July 1st, and we went to August 5th. That changes our normal timeline, which is, we always say, mid-June to the end of July, and we pulled off what I would say successful event. Lots of work goes into a Market Fest. And I was never so happy to write a little email to then City Manager Ellen Heinecker to say that, Ellen, the city staff has come together. Public Works has the place ready. We've painted the streets. Trash carts are ready. The board has reviewed all the applications. We've selected the entertainment. We've placed advertisements. We've delivered posters. And I can say that as of 1:52 today, July 1st, Market Fest is good to go. And we went from that time on and really had a good event. Thank you again for the city's support. And just like normally I'm here, I would introduce the Market Fest director, but Lisa Beecroft can't be with us this evening. It's really my joy, though, to introduce the chair of Market Fest, Dan Perry.
Thanks, Dave. Hey, Carter. And good evening, everybody. First of all, Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for the opportunity to have some time on this evening's agenda. If there's anybody in the room who's not familiar with Market Fest is a community event, or a festival, if you will, that's held for 7 consecutive Thursdays, starting in mid-June, running through the end of July. We are entering our 32nd year, and on a good night, we can draw up to 5,000 people to the heart of downtown White Bear Lake every single evening. Now, there are very few communities that can pull something like this off, and I feel incredibly fortunate to be a part of a community just like ours, a community where I have my business, and I'm fortunate to be a resident as well. Sorry, where am I? Looking over there, sorry, I apologize. So Market Fest, the mission of Market Fest has 2 main objectives. The first one is to ultimately support the downtown businesses here in White Bear Lake. And the second one is to enhance the overall community. Market Fest each year just kind of comes together. We've talked to Lisa about it a number of times, and just somehow every single year, the pieces of the puzzle just ultimately fall together. And that's from a collaboration of a large number of people in different organizations that ultimately come together with this common mission and goal in mind. Next slide, please.
Next slide, please.
Oh, there we go. Our Market Fest board is made up of 10 members, basically representing a variety of different businesses around the White Bear Lake area. Next slide. Actually, we can skip over this. We've touched on the overview as well. There's a theme week that goes along with every single week, and today I want to just highlight the 2 new theme weeks that we're going to be focusing on. July 14th, we have a theme week of White Bear Hockey Night, which is going to be new, and that's going to tie into the Hockey Day Minnesota that we're going to have coming to White Bear Lake in 2023. And then the other new theme night is the AFSA Science and Agriculture Night that's going to be held on July 21st. Next slide, please. The city has always been a tremendous advocate and a huge resource when it comes to pulling together all the pieces of Market Fest and actually allowing it to come off without a hitch. You know, that's the fire department, the police, the EMTs, and then really focusing on the Environmental Resource Fair, which is held on July 28th. Next slide. Over 180 vendors come to downtown White Bear Lake that represent a variety of different foods, arts and crafts, and just other vendors. We always focus on special rates for members that are really in the heart of downtown White Bear Lake. So City of White Bear Lake taxpayers receive 20% off of their vendor fee. If you're in the Special Services District in the heart, you receive 50% off of that fee. And then finally, if you have a business right in the footprint, it's allowable to have a stand right outside of your space for free as well. Next slide. Just have a map that really, and that's intended to be 2022, I apologize for that error. And just to kind of highlight the fact that the footprint is the same. We're asking to utilize the same space as we have historically, which is that square between 3rd and 4th Street and Banning and Washington Square. So Market Fest is going to look very similar to what it has the previous years. Next slide. I just wanted to have a quick overview of what our finances look like. Just some lines of expenses as well as total revenue that's generated through Market Fest, which predominantly comes from sponsors and vendors. Last year we netted about $16,000, and we anticipate that it's going to be very similar this year. The only real big change between the 2 years is that we were a 6-night event, scaled it down slightly last year, and then we're going back to our 7-evening event, planning on going back to our 7-evening event for this summer. And finally, moving on to the last slide, this is our ask. The City of White Bear Lake has always been tremendously supportive of Market Fest, not only from a financial standpoint, but for the use of resources as well. And our ask is $7,000 to help support and offset some of the expenses that come along with Market Fest. The use of downtown White Bear Lake, streets and sidewalks that was outlined in the map, again, extremely similar to previous years. Continued support of Public Works. We've typically used a Public Works truck and trailer for transportation of storage of chairs, as well as the different barricades that are utilized to support the police, the staff, and regulate parking. And then finally, just participation in Market Fest. In return, we'll hold 7 consecutive Thursday events. We'll promote high-quality activities and entertainment in a safe setting, and ultimately promote White Bear Lake as a destination city for communities around us. I'll pause right there to see what questions or comments we have.
Thank you very much for giving us an overview. Council, do we have any questions? Councilmember Edberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Perry, thank you to the committee and all. At some point, I'd be curious in looking at a balance sheet of the organization. Don't need it tonight, but
Yeah.
if you might share that with the city manager.
You bet.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, I'll just say thank you again to to you and all the volunteers. We look forward to another wonderful Manitou Days and Market Fest. And with that, we'll get on to some business of deciding whether or not we're going to provide a little financial support your way.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So with that, I'll bring it back to the council. We have a resolution before us that would give $7,000 to Market Fest and Manitou Days. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution as we see before us?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, and the resolution is adopted.
That's my first meeting.
I'm Bill Weigel. I'm chair of Manitou Days this year, last year and this year. Next year, Paul Carlson, Paul the plumber, is chair. So I'm looking forward to July 5th when the fireworks are over and Paul takes over. We are the celebration group for the city of White Bear Lake. We have lots of stuff going on. We've got 33, I believe, events going on. We start with, actually, Market Fest is our first event, and Market Fest is a separate group from Manitou Days, although many of us are on both groups and so on. But Market Fest kicks off Manitou Days on Thursday, June 16th. Then Friday, the 17th, is the parade. And we have, typically we have 100 units in the parade. This year, it's not going to be as many. Last year, it was less also because we were coming off of no parade in 2020. And last year, we did have a parade. It was the 2nd of July. And it was the second day after the governor had lifted restrictions on number of people that could gather outside. So we had a full crowd for the parade, and we expect the same thing this year. We're celebrating 100 years of water skiing this year, and we're also celebrating the lake, thus the slogan of Lake Bears, but we're celebrating 100 years. And our grand marshals this year are 2 Hall of Famers of the Water Ski Hall of Fame, Paul Chapin and his sister Evelyn Duvall. Their late father, Tom, is in the Water Ski Hall of Fame also, but they are our grand marshals. We have, first time ever, we've had an honorary chair, and actually it's a couple, and it's Cy and Vicki Ford that have done so much for the city, the Arts Center, the theater, just lots of things, and a lot of things for Manitou Days also. And then our volunteers of the year are Pat and Carol McFarland, and they will be in the parade and so on too. And then we have a button winner, Wesley Kapasak, 5th grader at Lake Ayres, and we surprised him last Thursday with an award and so on. And his class gets a pizza party, which will be coming up, I think, next week and so on. But anyway, he was the hero of the class, but he was very surprised. We have, like I mentioned, 33 events, I believe, that go on through, from the time of the Market Fest on the 16th to finishing up on the 4th of July with fireworks, the flyover, and music in the park, and so on. And so we're going to have a good Manitou Days. One thing we've accomplished this year, and we appreciate the finance department here at City Hall. Typically, when people would register for the parade, they'd get a sheet of paper. The last few years, they could download it from the website, fill it out, mail it in with a check. The checks got turned into the city puts it in an escrow account for us and pay our bills and so on. This year, we kind of bit the bullet and have parade registration online and have it so that people can pay their fees with a credit card that goes into North Star Bank, and then the White Bear Lake City Finance Department can get the money then and so on. So it's a big deal to be able to do that, and it's going to be more important as years come because people live and die with a credit card. So, and we also have it so people can be a sponsor or make a donation to Manitou Days with the same setup and so on. So we're very thankful to the city and the finance department for allowing us to do that and so on. And we have just a lot of things. We have a distribution day coming up the 3rd of June, which I think there's 39 grocery bags. They'll have 8 to 10 sets of posters and table tents and different things in it. Each business, there's 8 or 10 businesses per bag, and volunteers take those bags and go to each of those businesses and give them the posters. And this year we're putting in a Manitou Day button also for each business and so on. So it will wrap up with fireworks on the 4th of July. We appreciate very much the city's support, police department, fire department, public works, and all the things that you people do to help this celebration happen. We're looking forward to a good year and even a better year next year. We know that many people have COVID fatigue, and they're short of people and short of money, so they're not in the parade this year and so on. But we're still gonna have a great parade. We've got, I think, 4 bands plus the White Bear drum line, and then the drum line from Minneapolis that comes over and so on. So we're gonna have lots of stuff going on with the parade. Channel 19 records it and so on. So you can watch it over and over and over again on Channel 19, but you know, we appreciate them also. There's so many people in the community and surrounding areas that help out with Manitou Days, and we're just thankful for everybody. Thank you to the City Council for your support, and the city staff too. We appreciate that. So, any questions for any? You can ask Paul, but all right. Well, thank you so much for your support. We'll look to see many of you in the parade and throughout the time of Manitou Days. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Weigel.
I would just like
Sure.
to invite you guys. We have a meeting Thursday night up at the 2nd floor of Getty Building at 6:30, and then for the next every Friday morning here, 9 o'clock in the morning, just to come and see what we all do. This is a big deal to me. I've been part of it for 25 years. I grew up seeing this parade when I was a kid, and I don't want to see it go away. And we need all of us to be part of it in one form, shape, or another. So I just wanted to invite you all. Come to the meetings, come, see what we got to offer, see what you can do to help, and to be part of it. I just want to say, also, like he says, thank you for being behind the scenes and encouraging us to keep it going. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Well, I already jumped the gun on the resolution, so you have the money and resources you need, but is there anyone else that wants to present on this matter before we move on? Well, then I'll just extend one more heartfelt thanks to all of you and all the volunteers that make Manitou Days and Market Fest possible. I'm looking forward to it very much this year, so thank you again. All right, moving on to item 5B, the 2021 financial audit presentation and resolution, accepting the audit report. Ms. Kinsvater.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Today we have Brad Fultasek with the accounting firm of Abdo with us. Abdo finished our annual audit in March, and so now we've got the final financial statements. Mr. Faltisek has a presentation that he will give on the information.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor, council members, I know this is a hockey town and there is a game on tonight, so I will not be accepting questions tonight.
Somebody in the penalty box.
All right, so the first slide we have, or the second, I don't know who's controlling it, but I'll go through the auditor's opinion, our responsibility, general fund results, other governmental fund results, enterprise funds, and then at the end we do have some comparisons with your city to other cities of similar size, as well as other cities in the county. So we'll go through some of those comparisons just to kind of see where you sit. So next slide is the results of our audit. We issue, when you have an audit performed, you're looking for an auditor's opinion, and that's what we issue. That's our role in our responsibility is giving an opinion on the financial statements. So to go about that, we look at your controls. We look at how things are processed. We'll focus our audit on and our tests on high risk areas, high dollar amounts, those types of things. Look at confirm amounts that the state has sent you, make sure those are getting deposited where they should be deposited, county tax settlements, assessments, those types of things, making sure they're getting in the right spot. So we'll look through all that stuff, and we issue an opinion on the material, or that the financial statements are materially accurate in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So we are issuing an unmodified, or what we call a clean opinion on their financials. So that's the opinion you're looking for. The state audit requires us to go through a series of checklists, 7 to be exact, on different state statutes that they want us to test as part of our financial statement audit. And then we issue the Minnesota Legal Compliance Letter, and that is included in your other reports packet. I believe you received 3 or 4 different things in your packet related to this. This was in the other report. So we go through those checklists, and if there's any legal compliance, there's different state statutes. Any non-compliance, we'd report those in the compliance letter. We are reporting no non-compliance with those without those requirements this year either. The last report that's in the other reports is the report on internal control, and this is required for governmental or audits that are performed under governmental auditing standards. And so this takes a look at your internal control, and if there's any significant deficiencies in the internal control as far as how transactions are processed. So we'll look at how payments are processed. If one person's handling a transaction from beginning to end, that would raise to a higher significance of error or fraud within the organization. So we'd report those as a finding in the internal control letter, stuff like that. We're not reporting any findings in that letter either. So good reports all around as far as the results of the audit. Now we'll get into the results. So the next slide shows the general fund balances. You do have a fund balance policy to have fund balance no less than 35 to 50% of your next year's budget. You finished this year just above that. If you look at the chart, the shaded area is your fund balance policy, where the 35 to 50%. You can see in 2021 you were just above that minimum range that you have established. The top line there is the budget. So your budget increased from 21 to 2022 about 6.5%. So, but you were still able to increase your fund balance to support that and stay within stay just above your policy. Next slide is your budget to actual statement for your general fund. So we have the original final budget and then compared to your actual. Last column there is your variance. I know I believe you talked a lot about this in going through your rating calls and stuff, or going through your bonding, but revenues came in about $700,000 over what you'd budgeted. Much of that had to do with building permits. Actually, $400,000 of that had to do with building permits for the year. Another $350,000 had to do with intergovernmental revenue, so revenues from the state and county and those types of things, and federal government. Majority of that intergovernmental was a recording of the state contributes to the fire pension plan each year. And we recorded, the money doesn't flow through the city, it goes right to the pension plan, but it is something we need to record on the city books. So you don't budget that, it doesn't flow through the city, but we do record that $275,000 contribution as a revenue and an offsetting expense. So it doesn't affect the bottom line, it's just kind of throws your budget actuals off a little bit. Overall, your fund balance, the third line from the bottom there, increased $850,000 from last year, finishing at $6.6 million in reserves. Next slide. So this slide shows your general fund revenues, the major sources of revenues, and your expenditures, the larger departments. Kind of comparison over the last 3 years. You can see your levy has increased slightly each year following your levy. These are revenue, these are collections, so it's following your levy. The intergovernmental had a jump in 2020 related to the CARES Act, or CARES funding that came in that year and was recognized. All your charges for services have stayed pretty flat, and other, they just kind of catch all for everything else that general fund collects. Expenditures on the right-hand side there, general government, public safety, public works, park and rec, and then other. Public safety had a jump this year again because we recorded that $275,000 fire contribution or payment out then to the pension plan. And then in the other category, there was a jump there in 2020, also related to the CARES dollars coming in and this transferring those out to other funds. Next slide. These are your special revenue funds. So the special revenue funds are funds that are set aside that have either a restricted source by a third party or a committed revenue source by council. So a resolution where council is saying that this revenue is specific for this purpose. So that would, or a third party would be saying you're collecting this revenue for a specific purpose. So that would qualify for a special revenue fund. So the first one listed, the American Rescue Plan Fund, that was a new fund this year. That's where you're keeping the $1.4 million that you received. That's where you received the $1.4 million received from the rescue plan dollars this year. It doesn't have a fund balance. These are fund balances. That is a expenditure-driven grant, so the revenue is not recognized until expenditures are incurred. So you're not seeing a fund balance there. That negative 2679 deficit fund balance is related to deficit market value adjustments with your investments this year. So you'll see, if you look through the financials, you'll see the interest earnings in your in each of your funds is a negative amount because of the market value adjustments. And we're seeing that across the board with all cities, so nothing unusual there. Other funds there, Sports Center, or the Armory had almost a break even from previous year, $3,600 decrease in fund balance, $50,000 of the ARPA or the rescue plan dollars were put into that fund to support that fund. So that what allowed that to stay at a positive fund balance. The Sports Center increased fund balance $105,000 over last year. The Sports Center fund received $60,000 recognized as from that rescue plan dollars as well as a new lease for the Hockey Association. So that helped increase that fund balance in this Sports Center. Economic Development Fund had a $150,000 decrease in that. That's where a lot of the fees that were waived for COVID were financed out of the Economic Development Fund. Next slide, your capital project funds. So the chart there shows your fund balance resources, committed, assigned fund balances. So, but then the chart, the amounts above in the lines, those are your different project funds. You can see there's just over $4 million in your construction fund, which is a $300,000 decrease from prior year, but that's just based on the projects you have going on. So you're using that money for those projects. The HRA tax increment pool had an increase in fund balance this year. That's likely when that TIF district is decertified, likely have to pay some of that back to the county. You will get a portion of that back though with excess increment when you pay it for it. That'll get distributed amongst all entities.
Excess increment.
Excess increment. I'm not going to go into excess. Shelley's here for us to talk about tax increment. Community Reinvestment Fund had $276,000 decrease. Those were just transfers out to other funds to support other funds within the city. So next slide is your debt service funds. So you have 8 bonds, governmental bonds outstanding this year. You're going to issue another one tonight, but these are the 8 you have outstanding as of 12/31. What we look for is make sure you have cash resources to pay the debt service requirements on these funds, and as you can see, none of these are going into a deficit. So these are supported either through tax increment, tax levy, or special assessments. Then at the bottom chart shows your principal and interest payments over the next 10 years. So I have about 1.2 to $1.6 debt service requirements related to these bonds outstanding as of last year. Next slide is your water fund. So with the enterprise funds, the rest of the funds out here are enterprise funds. We typically look at just the cash flow and cash activities, operating activities. The top chart in each one of these is going to be your operating receipts compared to your operating disbursements plus any debt service requirements. So what we want to see is that you are generating enough operating receipts to support both your operating disbursements plus your debt service requirements. So the water fund here, you can see in 2021, a jump. So the darker orange line there is the receipts. You can see that had jumped from 2020. This was the first year of collecting the infrastructure fee. So that's where that jump comes in. 2020, the expenditures had a jump in 2020, but in 2021 you're more in line with what you were spending in 18 and 19. So you had some additional maintenance things that were expensed in 2020. You can see that sliver of a black line on top of there, that's your debt service payments. There were some interest payments due on one of the bonds this past year. So you'll see that grow as principal and interest starts becoming due in 2022. The chart below shows your cash balance. So you can see back in 2018, you had $178,000 cash balance in the water fund. And since then it has grown to, in 2021, you have $1.5 million of unrestricted cash. You have about $600,000. That's the top yellow piece of unspent bond proceeds. So that will be used to finish the project that was started in 2021. Next is your sewer fund. Sewer fund, you can see that top chart, there is no debt service requirements in the sewer fund. Your operating receipts have been meeting your operating disbursements, so sewer fund is doing well, and you can see your cash balance. Again, back in 2018, both water and sewer fund had very low cash balances, and since then, by looking at your rates and stuff, you have been able to increase those. The black line that we have in here, and it was on the previous chart as well, that's what we as auditors just recommend you have as a minimum reserve for your operations. So there's not a state statute or anything related to that. It's just something we put in there. But you can see that black line comes from 50% of your operating disbursements plus 100% of your debt service requirements for the following year. That's where we come up with that number. So you can see your sewer fund has met that minimum amount for this past year. Next one is your refuse fund. Again, the refuse fund had a good year, 2020 year, probably 21 the best year, the last four presented here as far as receipts over disbursements. Cash balances also, you can see it increased in 2021 up to almost where that minimum reserve would be that we'd recommend. Ambulance fund, receipts, disbursements pretty much break even within the ambulance fund. Your cash since 2000, in 18 you had deficit cash in the fund. In 2019 you did generate $300,000 and then have sustained that ever since then. License Bureau fund. So you can see in 2000, you can see your cash balances stayed pretty steady, $176,000 in 18, $184,000, or $209,000, I'm sorry, in 2021. So have increased slightly. 2019, this fund once was able to transfer out a significant amount of money to other funds. 2019, you transferred out $150,000. Last year, you transferred, or 2020, you transferred $75,000, and this past year you didn't transfer anything out. So that's partly the reason you're keeping that cash balance where it is right now. But and then you also this past year transferred, or this fund recognized $50,000 of the rescue plan dollars too. So this fund isn't doing as well as it used to. The next slide, Pioneer Manor Fund. So with the debt service in here on that top chart, the receipts are pretty much break even with the disbursements and the debt service requirements. And you can see that falls in line with the cash balance. It has stayed pretty consistent at that $300,000 mark over the last 4 years presented. Internal service funds. This is your insurance fund and employment expense fund. So these are just supporting other departments throughout the city. These two funds charge other city departments for the services. You can see it stay pretty consistent. You have healthy cash in here, $5.5 million of cash in here, and you can see where we have the reserve requirement there, which is 50% of your disbursements. The next slide is your total cash and investments in the city. So back in 19, you had $34,000 cash and investments, and now you have $43,000. So you can see where those funds are sitting to. The dark yellow, the majority of your funds are sitting in capital reserves for capital projects. And then you can see your general fund has increased slightly over the years, but the other ones have stayed pretty consistent from as far as where the cash is sitting by type. Then we get into the ratios and comparisons with your city and other cities. So your peer groups we have in here, the dark orange is Class 2 cities, which are cities across the state of 20,000 to 100,000 in population. The yellow is the cities and other cities in Ramsey County, and the greenish color is cities of populations of 20 to 30,000. So we broke that down into something similar to yours throughout the state. So we have a number of different comparisons in here. The first slide here is on taxes. Your tax rate is for 2021 was at 22.2%. You can see your peers on the chart. So the black line in each one of these charts is the city of White Bear. You can see your peers are quite a bit higher. Cities of 20 to 30,000 population are at that 45% tax rate. You're at the 22%. So you're almost half of what other cities of similar size are throughout the state of Minnesota. And other cities in Ramsey, about 11% lower as far as tax rate. So quite a bit lower tax rate than others, similar communities of similar size. Taxes per capita, same story there. Other cities of 20 to 30, almost $600 per resident. You're at 323, so $280 per resident less as far as what they're paying in taxes. So both categories much lower than other cities of similar size. The next slide, debt. We're looking at long-term debt per capita and debt service as a percent. So you have issued bonds over the last few years. You can see how your line has increased as far as your long-term debt per capita. It's increasing. However, it's still less than your peers. You can see again, the 20 to 30 population cities are up at that $1,400 per resident, and you're at $800. So $500 per resident less as far as debt per capita. Debt service expenditures as a percent of current expenditures. So you're right, you're pretty much right in line with others in this category. So pretty similar, I guess, there. Next slide, expenditures. So just to look at current expenditures and capital expenditures here. Yours is the black bar, but again, current expenditures, these would be your general operating type expenditures, just day-to-day expenditures, taking out debt, taking out capital. You're spending 2021 about $570 per resident, where others are spending 20 to 30 is $775 per resident. So again, just on the day-to-day operating type expenditures, you're quite a bit less as well. And then capital is going to fluctuate from year to year. It's kind of interesting to see what others are doing there. So no real analysis there other than seeing what others are doing. And that is what I have for the presentation. Overall, I think the city had a good year financially, so certainly we'll take any questions.
Council, any questions? Councilmember Redberg.
6 of them.
6.
So first an observation, Mr. Falczak. I've appreciated the charts that you provided, and in previous years that's been provided to us in advance. Not necessarily in the audit, but in supplemental or prior to our meetings.
Oh.
And we've had a chance to. So we received 192 pages of plain charts, numbers and text.
For the financial statements, yep.
Yeah, some pictures would be nice. So just an encouragement.
Okay.
Take it as a request from one council member.
Sounds good. 2 council members. Dan's going to be in agreement.
Fair enough.
Crayon is preferred.
Fine. So on page 36, you note that we account for our HRA as basically a department or a subdivision of city government. We've had some very early discussions as we think about economic development and housing development in the community. What are the triggers for saying, now, if you're going to do something, you should think differently about how you track expenditures or report your HRA function? When would we want to be thinking about making any changes, or can this remain in this format and in this part of the audit ad infinitum?
It can remain in the audit infinite, forever. Yep.
So for comparability purposes, we can maintain it there and always look back, and we don't have to worry about reclassifying it in any serious way. Okay, great, thank you.
Unless something comes out where a standard would say something different, but currently, no.
Okay. So on page 46, we note that we have debt limitations of about $100 million, and we're using about $3 million of that, if I'm rounding numbers.
Okay.
All right. What I'm trying to get at is, as we look at trying to fund our infrastructure and maintain the quality of service that we have, I don't know that we're growing a whole lot, but we might grow some. How should we be thinking about that difference between where we are at and at least what the state or others say we could be? The $3 million to $100 million is a big jump. How do we think about that?
I think you need to think about it as far as where you want your tax levy, because if you issue more debt, you're going to have to, there's going to be a levy involved in that. So where do you want that tax levy to be? And if you're going to issue debt, you're going to have additional levies. It's going to increase that tax levy. So I think because you have so much room there, flexibility there, you can be issuing more debt. It's just a matter of watching that tax levy and tax rates, which, going back to some of those charts, you are quite a bit lower than other communities in, I guess, similar size too, so.
Okay. So we're not facing any legal or accounting issues that are constraints. It's our question of judgment and prudence in how we pay for it.
Right.
All right, great, thank you. So on page 49, basically it's a city balance sheet, okay?
Okay.
And we have somewhere in the vicinity of 40, depending on the number, 45, 46, $47 million that we say is our asset, mostly in infrastructure. Sewer and roads are a couple of the big ones.
Okay.
All right. There's no offsetting liability. I'm not sure that straight line accounting is exactly the right way to think about how do you plan or how do you budget for maintenance. I mean, the statements are presented as net of depreciation, and that's about it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't, we dug up pipes that are still lead and copper from 80, 90 years ago in a couple of street reconstructions a couple of years ago. So we got some old stuff still out there.
Sure.
Do our financial statements give us any guidance on how we should reserve or plan for or think about reserving for a proper level of maintenance? My fear is we have a lot of stuff. Most of it isn't visible.
Yeah.
Most of us don't even know what we own or what we have. And I'm concerned that we under budget for repair and maintenance. And I'm just trying to balance that. What do our financial statements say? Does it give us any clues about how to think about maintenance?
You can think about, if you look at, there's a schedule in the note disclosures that shows your your assets and then depreciation. So you can take a look at, okay, and we used to have a ratio in the presentation related to that. It said, are your assets 50% depreciated? So some of those old ones, if they're fully depreciated, those would certainly, so as that percentage gets lower, or I guess however you look at it, if it shows that more assets are fully depreciated or higher depreciation, typically you would see more maintenance costs related to that. So that'd be an indication if you have a high percentage of depreciation, that you are going to have more maintenance costs. It's not a true indication, though, either. It's a tricky one, because assets were put on the books in 2003 when GASB 34 came around. So, and if anything if 20 years older, or older than 20 years, and it was already fully depreciated, a lot of that stuff didn't get on the books. So it's not a one-to-one either. It wasn't required to be put on the books. It would have been a nightmare to put some of that stuff on the books that was already fully depreciated, and it's not affecting your financials in any way either. So,
Right. I mean, we can't exactly leverage them. We can't borrow against them.
Right.
We can't sell them.
you can't sell them.
Yeah, okay, fine. Does anybody want to use sewer system?
Right.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yep.
So page 118, we have a discussion about unfunded liabilities, and there's some interesting observations about our pension funds.
Okay.
What's your assessment of, do you know what I'm referring to?
Not necessarily. I know pensions are a big deal. So if it's related to the Public Employees Retirement Association, yeah.
It's the percentage of our unfunded liabilities that are covered, and we are way better this year than we have historically been in terms of I want to know how much of that is volatile versus how much of that can be secured, or how much of it is true progress, or is it just a vagary of the stock market?
Investments did really well at para last year, which decreased that unfunded amount quite a bit. It would have increased by a lot more. However, para decreased their rate of return, or their from 7.5 to 6.5,
Yeah.
so which would have increased your liability. But the how well the investments did last year, or the last period, helped out everybody.
Are those ours, or do we share those with everybody else who's covered by para?
Share them with everybody else. And your percentage that gets allocated to the city of White Bear is based on how much you pay in for that plan year. So if you paid in last year, you'd get less allocated to you. It has nothing really to do with the previous plan. It's just whatever was in that plan year, they allocate it based on that percentage.
So the interpretation is the state plan is better funded today than it has been. That theoretically reduces our risk in needing to come up with cash to honor future pension obligations or health care to retirees. Or what's the better way of thinking about that?
So you're paying on a pay-as-you-go basis. However, it is an unfunded liability that the standards say needs to be allocated out to the contributing members. If you were to say, we're no longer going to be a city, we're going to just up and stop, that your portion of the liability would be allocated to other members. You wouldn't have to come up with your unfunded, whatever was allocated to you last year. It would just be allocated to the other members. So would you ever have to pay off that unfunded liability? Not in current state. You won't.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt. I just have a question
Yeah,
in that
sure.
vein, because I'm curious. I know nothing about pensions, public pensions, but I
Yep.
know a fair amount about the private pensions, Teamsters, Machinists Pension Fund. And in that world, if you sell your business, if you withdraw from further contributions, there is withdrawal liability. You're saying it doesn't work like that with regard to para? That's what I'm not following you on.
Yeah, your unfunded liability would just be allocated to the other contributing members,
So there is no withdrawal liability then?
not from the city, no.
Okay. Do you know what para's current funding percentage is right now? You said it went up last year.
I do not.
Okay.
So several places in the audit, it notes that we've suffered investment losses.
Yep.
Is that purely on a mark-to-market basis, or does it reflect actual losses in the value of our investment?
Market.
Okay. The market turns around, things go up. Our basic positions haven't changed. They're just worth more if the market goes up.
Right.
Got it. Thank you. Last question. So historically in your reports, you've identified risks on tax collectability. In other words, what percentage of our property taxes do we levy but are unpaid? And it's traditionally been a relatively low amount. 1, 2, 3%, somewhere in that vicinity. I couldn't find that comparison. Maybe I didn't look in the right place. Have we seen, with the challenges of the COVID economy, have we seen, or other communities of our size, nature, experienced an increase in uncollectability because of financial stress in the economy, or has that not been an issue?
I have not seen it.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Any other questions? Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if this is for Mr. Faltasek necessarily, but you mentioned the CARES Act. I was just going to ask about the CARES Act, and maybe Director Kinsvater can answer. But we handed out a lot of money. It was unusual. We're not used to doing that. Everybody in the country did. Every city in the country did. Just thinking as auditing now, we gave it to a lot of people. We gave it to businesses, so that's pretty quick. That's pretty easy. What they did with it, we didn't specify. But we also gave some money to funds or to agents because it made sense. They're already set up to give funds out. I can't think of any examples, but I remember human services organizations or things like that. Is there any kind of a check-in on that from our perspective? I'm just thinking ahead, like we're going to be sitting here, there's going to be some fraud or waste or abuse or something that happens with CARES Act funding, and then we're going to be, why did you guys gave them $200,000 and you just looked the other way, didn't worry about where that money went, was it spent right? So I'm not sure if we even can kind of do that, but maybe it's informal. So that's kind of my thought as you were going through CARES Act funding. So, I don't know.
There are some compliance things that, depending on the type of grant or what you gave out and who you gave it to, there are some compliance things you would need to follow. How they applied for it, maybe what they applied for and gave you at that point was enough, sufficient. It would kind of depend on each grant and who it was given to.
Wouldn't be the worst practice just to do a check-in on that, because I think most of that money's spent now, or should have been.
Should have been.
If I may interject, there were specific regulations of which we could and could not use that for, and there was a pretty significant reporting requirement through the state that we had to submit all that to, that they handled for the federal government. So I'm confident that we did that correctly, but we can certainly check in on it again.
Yeah, I think we did. I'm just thinking of a couple of times we donated. We gave money for a specific purpose, and I have to go back and look at the notes. And we used a structure that was already in place because they were used to handing out grants and things. And then I think we probably said, okay, we did our thing. We gave them the money and it was for this purpose. But do we know that money got out for that purpose? And it's really not us. It's the next level. So, thank you.
Council, any further questions? Thank you, sir.
All right,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
All right, bringing it back here to the council, we have a resolution before us accepting the audit report, and I would entertain a motion to approve that.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the resolution accepting the audit report say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The resolution passes. Moving on to item 6, public hearings. We have nothing scheduled. Item 7, unfinished business. We have nothing scheduled, which brings us to 8A, resolution awarding the sale of general obligation and improvement bonds to finance a portion of the 2022 street improvement project. Ms. Kinsvater.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you have received 2 memos over the last week. The first memo that came out with the packet was, that'll be the first part of my little talk here. That's explaining how our ratings call went with S&P as part of our bond process. The second memo that was on the dais when you arrived today, that was a summary of the actual bid opening for the bond sale today, and I'll also be covering that. But just to kind of go over all of this so that our residents watching and the people in the council chambers kind of understand our process, the City Council authorized the issuance of $3,025,000 general obligation bonds to fund the city's street improvement projects for 2022 at the April 12th council meeting. Since that time, staff has been working with Ellers to prepare for today's bond sale. During this process, S&P Global Financial affirmed the city's bond rating at AA+ for this current issue, and when they go back and do that, they also then affirmed that AA plus rating for all outstanding bond issues. So everything is covered at that AA plus. The AA plus rating is one step below the top rating, which is a AAA bond rating. Through that process, S&P, they look at our annual financial reports, they look at our long-range financial planning, they look at our capital improvement plan, they kind of go over our operations just to get a good understanding of where we are financially. S&P stated that their outlook for the city's financial status is stable. These strong ratings are attributed to the City Council's accomplishments in developing and implementing that long-range financial planning model that we use, and for the policies that you've implemented in recent years. As the report noted, the city's local economy is experiencing significant residential and commercial development, which is leading to improved market values. The consecutive years of surplus operating results have also sustained very strong reserves and liquidity, and the S&P views those strong reserves as credit strength. Even though their future debt plans are expected to kind of weaken their view of the city's debt profile, S&P considers the city's credit characteristics to correspond with that AA rating requirements, and that's why they issued and affirmed that rating for us. As they indicated that in their report, and that was included in your packet that went out, if we would try to increase to that AAA rating, we would need to add tax capacity to the city and increase those fund reserves even higher than what we have to meet their characteristic levels for that AAA rating. So as we proceeded into the bond sale for today, at 10 a.m. there was a bond bid opening. 4 investment firms bid on the city's bond sale. There was a variance of just under 0.5% between the top bid and the lowest bid. The top 3 bids were very competitive, with less than 0.1% between those 3. So it was a good showing for our bond sale. The lowest bid came in from Northland Securities, that's in Minneapolis. The true interest cost on the bid is 3.2177%. This rate is just 1/10 under the percent higher than the financial projections that we used when Ellers were creating our sale reports. So our estimates were just a little bit short, but given the changes in the market in recent weeks, it's a good, strong showing for that. The market has increased 54 basis points, so it's like 0.5% in the time when in these last couple of weeks between when we did the pre-sale and this. So for ours, just to be that little bit over is really good. We didn't see that whole 0.5% increase in the interest rates. The bid the lowest bid included a $15,000 premium component. When there's a premium component to the bid on debt, the city can either choose to retain the original bond sale amount, so that would have been the $3.25 million, or we could reduce the bond issue by that premium so that we keep that true interest cost closer to the bid amount. Staff chose to reduce the bond sale by that $15,000 to make the new issue that you'd be approving tonight $3,010,000. This practice is consistent with how the bond issues have been handled in past years. So this premium is less than what it has been in previous years. Last year, I think it was about $190,000. But I think when we look at that $15,000 being the premium, you kind of see the market kind of stabilizing because the coupon rate and the interest rate in the market are relatively close. When they're farther apart, that's when you see that premium come into play. The pre-sale report that was presented to the City Council on April 12th estimated that the annual tax levy for the 15 years of the bond life would range between $199,000 to $203,000 over those 15 years. Based on today's bond sale information, the actual tax levy will be between $200,000 and $205,000. So if we average it out, it's about $1,100 more a year just by us having that little bit higher interest rate. For comparison purposes, I looked back and looked at our interest rate that we've got on this and compared it to where our interest rates have been on previous bond issues. And the true interest cost on this bond is less than the interest rate that was on the city's 2018A issue. We issued 2 bonds that year. One, the A, was for improvement bonds and equipment certificates to repair the refrigeration unit at the sports center. The second issue we did was a tax abatement bond to do the renovation of the sports center, and that was even higher. So this interest rate, even though it's higher than what we've had in the last couple of years, it's still below where we were in 2018. Staff recommends the City Council adopt the resolution awarding the sale of the general obligation bonds, Series 2022A, in the adjusted aggregate principal amount of $3,010,000. We do have Shelley Eldridge from Ellers with us this evening. If you have any questions about the bond sale and the market or anything that she can clarify too. So I can answer any questions, or we can have Shelley come up and speak too.
Great, thank you. Council, questions, comments? Councilmember Edberg.
I'll just make one comment. You gave credit to the city council for enacting policies. I think you've got it upside down. I think our staff deserves credit for the work in creating the systems that we have to obtain and retain a AA+ is really impressive. It's something that has not been always a part of our culture. The tools that you're using give us greater information and predictive power. We didn't do any of that. We just were smart enough perhaps to follow your recommendations. So kudos to the previous city managers, to staff, to all who are currently involved in making these systems work. You guys deserve the credit. So thank you for that work.
I would entertain a motion to adopt the resolution awarding the sale of general obligation improvement bonds.
Move to
approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Resolution passes. Moving on to item 8B, resolution approving a request by Beartown Bar and Grill for an amendment to a conditional use permit and a variance at 4875 Highway 61. Ms. Crosby.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Here we go. That was weird. That was all supposed to be hidden. Sorry. There we go. The subject site, 4875 Highway 61, is located on the northwest corner of 7th Street and Highway 61. It is zoned DCB, which is Diversified Central Business District. The property is just about 1 acre in size and contains a 4,000 square foot restaurant bar with 72 parking spaces and outdoor seating on the south side of the building. In 2021, staff administratively approved the expansion of the outdoor seating area in order to bring the permitted expansion into compliance, the applicant is now requesting a conditional use permit amendment to expand the outdoor seating area and a 4-foot variance from the 10-foot hard surface setback from the railroad right-of-way. And with that conditional use permit amendment to modify condition number 5, no outside music shall be permitted. As you can see from this 2013 aerial photo, there used to be a curb cut and parallel parking. Oops, a little circle's a little off, in the area where the patio expansion is now located. North is to the left on this graphic. Staff supported the 4-foot variance from the 10-foot hard surface setback because it is an existing condition with no known adverse impacts for the past at least 19 years. Also, the improvement eliminates a curb cut that is uncomfortably close to a major intersection. The curb cut will actually be removed when the intersection is reconstructed in the near future in association with the North Campus High School project. The area to the north of the new patio is now has signs, parking lot signage that says no parking. Because it is now used as a turnaround area, should somebody drive into that parking lot and then find that there are no parking spaces available, they need to be able to turn around and exit back out again. Even though a few parking stalls were lost with the expansion of the expansion of the outdoor seating by 34 seats, parking still meets code. Applicant has requested that the musicians be set up in the southeast corner of the patio, pointing towards the building, and staff recommended that the musicians be located in the northwest corner of the patio so that the sound faces Highway 61. After discussing the location of the musicians and the speakers, the commission decided to delete condition number 6 as they determined that the issue was sufficiently addressed by condition number 10 that said the outdoor music shall not create a nuisance to the surrounding neighborhood. As is evidenced by these aerial photos, the proposal is a significant improvement to a long-standing neighborhood business. Staff had recommended approval of the conditional use permit and setback variance, and with one change to the resolution, the commission unanimously recommended approval as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crosby. Council, any questions, comments?
One clarification, just I'm going by what was included in the letter from the resident saying how much, we're approving one night of music. So if they wanted to add a second or whatever day, they'd have to come back here.
That's correct.
That's all the clarification. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to accept the resolution?
Pretty straightforward. I'll move approval of the resolution.
Second. Motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution carries. And, you have your conditional use permit. Moving on to item 8C, resolution approving a request by Christensen Company's Tommy Car Wash for a conditional use permit, site plan review, and 3 variances at 4061 Highway 61. Ms. Crosby.
Thank you. Yeah, both on Highway 61. Thank you, Mayor and council members. The subject site is located on the southwest corner of Highway 61 and County Road F. The property is zoned B3, which is auto-oriented business, and it lies within the Shoreland Overlay District. The property is 1.3 acres in size and has a 24-foot wide access easement that runs north-south through the property, which is supposed to be in line with that eastern access opening there. I don't know why all my graphics jump from Planning Commission to Council. Sorry about that. The site contains a repair shop, a Hertz rental car dealer, a gas station, and a Hertz rental car station, like a business, I should say, a gas station, and a convenience store. The applicant would like to demolish the site and construct an express car wash facility called Tommy's. Consequently, they are requesting a conditional use permit for a car wash in the B3 auto-oriented business district. And I should say that this CUP also includes site plan approval for development in the Shoreland Overlay District. They're also requesting 3 variances, which I'll address in turn. The proposed layout eliminates the western access opening, which simplifies the traffic flow and increases the green space on the site. Because of the access easement, the site is bound to maintain the eastern curb line in its existing condition, which on the very south side of the east property line is within the 15-foot hard surface setback required by the code. This is about 30 lineal feet of curb, which does not comply with the setback requirement, and because of the easement, staff supported this variance. The code also requires that stacking be provided to accommodate the number of vehicles that can be washed within a 30-minute period. This particular facility is an express wash with newer technology that has the ability to service 100 cars every half hour. Based on other washes in similar sized or larger communities, the applicant estimates that the peak demand will be an average of 18 vehicles every half hour. The proposed design provides 21 stacking spaces. Given that the estimated demand is significantly less than the capacity of the equipment, staff is confident that the cars will progress quickly through the wash and therefore supports this second variance. Again, the existing infiltration basin is located in the northeast corner of the site, and this basin will hopefully be oversized, if possible, to offset the impervious area variance. The applicant has agreed to work with staff in exploring the possibility of increasing this basin to accommodate heavier rainfall events. The applicant has also agreed to both increase the number of trees and to plant no-mow native prairie in the larger green spaces on the south and east sides of the site. These trees will both help to uptake rainfall and to absorb carbon generated by idling vehicles. The native ground cover will help to reduce the amount of irrigation required to keep the site looking lush and green during the summer months. For these reasons, staff supported the third variance, the third impervious area variance. The standard franchise architecture of beige and bright red has been replaced with mostly gray brick and gray fiber cement panels. However, the bright red accents do remain at the entrance and exit of the car wash tunnel. Overall, the proposal is a vast improvement over existing conditions, not only in appearance, but also in relation to compliance with current code requirements. Staff had recommended approval of the conditional use permit in 3 variances, and the Planning Commission unanimously agreed. As a reminder, I would like to note that since one of these 3 variances was recognized after the public hearing notice went out, the City Council should open up the floor to the public in case anybody would like to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crosby. We will do that right now and open up for anyone who wishes to make a comment on that. So I'll open up the public hearing at this time. Can you just please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, good evening. My name is Tanner Brandt with Christensen Companies, 4609 33rd Avenue South, Suite 400, Fargo, North Dakota. I'm here with Christensen Companies, the developer. We build these car washes pretty much all across the country. I guess I just wanted to offer myself up for questions. If you have any clarifications, any questions you may need, just let me know and I can help out. Thanks.
Thank you. I have one quick question for you.
Yep.
We obviously have some water issues that are pending and pressing and are coming down the horizon. I know this would be a high consumption of water, this project, this business. So you guys are aware of what's going on, and you've kind of been put on notice for the potential for water restrictions in the future, and you're going in eyes wide open with that.
Yep. We have. It has been mentioned. We've talked about it. We are aware of what's going on. We think we have a pretty we have the reclamation system that we use, and we think we're pretty we use less water than if you were to wash your car in your driveway. So we think we have a pretty good hold on that, and that's something that we could work through if that were something to happen.
So with the reclamation system, can you just briefly tell me kind of how that works? Do you use it for the car wash? Where's it going?
Yep. So every car that goes through, we use 33 gallons to wash the car. 10 of those gallons of water go into the reclamation system and get reused and put into the lower portion of or are used on the lower portions of the cars in the wash. And then it goes through a reclamation tank, oil, sand, interceptor, and then multiple tanks to go through and reclaim. And then those 10 gallons, for every wash, about 30% of the water gets reused, and then the rest, all of that water goes into the sanitary sewer.
Thank you. Does anyone else on the council have questions? Councilmember Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Brand and Christian, for being here to represent this. It's always appreciated when someone's asking for a variance that they are here, so I appreciate that. Addressing another note from resident potential noise. I lived in that backyard for 20 years on the other side. Just for other council members, I don't think noise is an issue. It was addressed at the Planning Commission. doors are closed most of the time. I get that they may not be all the time, but as far as the loudspeakers from the dealerships and the car wash already happening at Holiday, there's a lot of noise, and there is a buffer, again, as stated in 61. So that's my biggest two things. I just wish that, I'd be curious if between, here you've got Saputo dumping millions of gallons of clean water, millions. Next door, I'm going to look at staff and say, look at you and look at Velamo and say, it's going straight into Goose Lake and down the Mississippi River, millions of gallons of water. They're right next door using a perfect source of gray water. I'm like, can we think someday about doing that? And so it's like, I don't know, I wish I could almost put something into this agreement that says we would ask a question or we was, I don't know. It's kind of too late to this.
You're doing it.
I'll still approve, but I'm like, I mean, do you guys really care where your plumbing comes from or your water comes from? Would a gray water, and it's better than gray, trust me on that, because it's going straight in to Goose Lake, which is right there.
Yeah, I guess I don't know enough about kind of the whole situation.
I understood.
To answer that.
I'm not picking on you,
Yeah, no,
although that would be fun, but no. But it just seems like an opportunity to at least, I don't want to hold up anything, not at all. Want this to proceed. It's a great reinvestment in the corner, obviously. It just, I guess as staff, is there anything I can do to say, ask the question? Because it's not built yet. And I don't want it to cost any more money or, okay, Mr. Mayor, I'll put it to Mr. Mayor and he can take it from there.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting concept. I don't have anywhere near enough
Yeah, I know.
knowledge. I don't think anybody has the technical knowledge to know even if that's feasible, whether or not the water's clean enough to then support this business. Here's what I think about that. I get it. There's an opportunity there. I assume your clients would, if they had the opportunity to buy efficient water at a cheaper price from their neighbor and Saputo was willing to sell it, you guys would entertain that at some point, if that were at all possible from a technical standpoint. So that's about as far as I'm willing to go. Hey, look into that. If it's possible, save us some water. But beyond that, I don't know what else we can do.
No way is a means of hitting up Saputo, by the way, who's been
Sure.
doing, that building's been doing business like that
Yeah.
for,
No, I think you're asking the right questions, and we're you got your finger on it. How do we become more efficient with water? I mean, from my standpoint, I don't know what we can do about that right now, other than
not tonight.
cross our fingers and see what technological advances come in the future. So,
I have a silly question. How do you get 100 cars cleaned in 30 minutes? How does that, I mean, I'm just thinking they're driving through at 50 miles an hour.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so we've got the 3 lanes. The first lane closest to the building has a cashier. The second lane has a credit card, reader. And then the third lane is Tommy Club, so it's a membership that you pay a monthly fee for. So those are just, as you pull up, there's a license plate reader. Reads your license plate, lets you right through. So you can just, those are constantly flowing through. And so there's never a slowdown for taking payment or, and then as you come around the corner and get into the wash, you can have 5 cars on the it's a conveyor belt system. Instead of that old, the older chain and roller, it's a conveyor belt that basically pulls the car through. So you can 200 cars an hour is the top that we can do, without speeding up the conveyor belts. But if you have the cars stacked, back to back. We don't see that very often, but if they're stacked back to back and just have a consistent flow of it, then that's, it takes about 2.5 minutes to wash a car. So they move pretty quickly.
is it a touchless wash or does it use the rollers?
It uses the, microfiber, rollers basically.
Just curious. Yeah. Council, any other questions? Well, I want to know. I might use it.
We actually have those. We have a mat washer right outside of the, in the parking or in the vacuum area where you put your mat washer through or mat through and pulls it through and cleans it. So I've got an option for that too.
That was a useful question.
Yeah, there you go.
The only thing left to ask is when are you open, I guess.
Well, that starts with us. So that segues
As soon
into-
as we can.
Let's call the question. I'd entertain a motion to adopt the resolution
I'll move
approving.
approval.
Second.
Second, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, resolution passes. All right. Item 8D, resolution approving recommendations and authorizing the city manager to invite participants for County Road E project team and advisory group. Ms. Schimick, is this?
Yes. Mayor, council members, let me just find my spot here, I apologize. No. Apparently, it's my first rodeo. All right. Mayor, members of council, tonight we're here just briefly to bring you along on the next step of our County Road E planning process, and that's appointing people to our project team and parameters for our citizen advisory group. There will be 2 advisory groups that advise this process to make sure there's ample community input to the process. One of those is a project team comprised of up to 20 members. This is between the 3 partner cities, which in the 3 partner cities of Venice Heights, Gem Lake, and of course White Bear Lake. Those 20 members include appointees by the city as well as county, state, metropolitan council, and various community leaders. The city has the discretion to directly appoint 3 members to the project team, as well as collaborate with the other team members on the other project team members. In addition to that, there will be a citizen advisory group. The citizen advisory group is really meant to broaden the perspective and input that is given into the process, as well as act as ambassadors to the community, getting input and really getting people to engage in the process and come to the community meetings. The purpose of the Citizen Advisory Group is to ensure a diverse representation. There will be up to 20 community members. Again, the city has the discretion, or each city in the project has the discretion to appoint 5 members, and then additional 5 members will be appointed in collaboration with the project partners. We're here tonight to present recommendations for the appointees. For the project team, staff would recommend that Council Members Edberg, Council Member Joan, Planning Commissioner, and Planning Commissioner Amundsen be appointed to the 3-person, as the 3-person city, as well as in collaboration for those seats at large, Jan Johnson, who is a County Road E business owner. In addition to those specific recommendations, staff is asking the council to authorize the city manager to recruit and appoint members to the Citizen Advisory Group as detailed on this slide, including a resident each from Ward 4 and Ward 5 identified with input from the respective council members for those wards, an employee of a White Bear Lake County Road E business, a owner or manager for a White Bear Lake County Road E business, and a representative of a County Road E affordable housing development, or one in the proximity of County Road E. Staff's recommendation is that council adopt the resolution included in your packet, which appoints the 4 members to the County Road E project team and authorizes the city manager to recruit and invite members to participate in the advisory group based on the parameters listed therein.
Thank you. Council, any questions for Ms. Schimick? Seems pretty straightforward. We've got a good game plan, and I understand that those recommendations that staff are making for the council members, planning commission member, have been asked in advance, and everybody's willing and able to serve, which makes sense, given the location. With that, I'd entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, the resolution passes. Moving on to item 9, discussion. We have nothing scheduled, which brings us to item 10, communications from the city manager. Ms. Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor. In the audience tonight, we have Jason Lindahl, our new Community Development Director. So just wanted to introduce him. He's been here. This is now the start of week 2, already diving in. So welcome to Jason. We had our spring cleanup day last Saturday down at Public Works, and it was, I'm told, the busiest that we have seen it. Very, very steady. So that was a wonderful event. Touch a Truck is this Thursday at Podman Park from 5 to 7 p.m. Just a reminder, if you're going to come, to try and bring a donation to fill the food shelf truck. Let's see here. I passed out the New Tracks 10-year anniversary open house, which is May 23rd. It's an open house, a free event. They are asking for an RSVP should you be interested, but you can just show up that day as well. And then on May 21st, Mayor Lewis met Councilmember Hughes, and I will be at Fire Operations 101 in Maplewood with a handful of other city representatives, where they'll take us through CPR, vehicle extrication, and a live fire training. So
We didn't get that.
you were asked if you wanted to attend. So. Yeah.
Can we volunteer a council member to be extricated?
Yeah.
There you go.
So we'll, I'm sure there will be documentation that we can share with all of you for
And
some
photos.
humor.
Videos.
Yeah, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Lindahl, on behalf of the council, welcome to White Bear, and we look forward to working with you and to see all the good work ahead of us. So,
Thank you
welcome.
very much. Yep, great to be here.
Mr. Mayor, if I have an update, if it's appropriate at this time, from the Purple Line Corridor Management Committee.
Yes,
I
please
think
do.
it would be the appropriate time. It's been in the newspaper, and that's fine, but I thought just an official update to my colleagues in the council. So, reconstituted Purple Line Corridor Management Committee. There had been a committee before. This is kind of a reconstituted one. We had our first meeting on April 29th, and I'll just say I was a little surprised, pleasantly surprised by the reception of the group. And I think it's an advisory group to the Met Council, essentially, on the project. So we got a little taste in advance, looking at the packet, what kind of where they were thinking. They asked me to present kind of the resolution, basically. It's like, what's the history behind it? How did you come to this? So I gave a little 5-minute talk on kind of, I hope I characterized it well, just kind of our discussion and some of the ups and downs of it, and then there was good discussion and bad discussion, I think. I tried to characterize the good discussion, I'll just briefly, but I thought the best discussion we had as a council and as a city was really just about the future of the city. And, do we risk becoming isolated without transit coming to our area? I think that was the main point, I think, for having the project in White Bear Lake, versus, willing to take that risk to protect, preserve, whatever the word is, the character of the town. So I think that was the best part of the debate. I tried to characterize that. They moved from there to a discussion of opportunities or where we're headed, and there was kind of an interesting presentation from staff on pros and cons of kind of option one, which is to carry on with Rush Line or Purple Line into White Bear Lake as planned. And the staff went through, I thought, a pretty interesting and well done kind of a pro and con, and kind of some of the questions I've been asking, like, how do you work with a project with a city that doesn't want to cooperate? And I've been kind of asking, okay, we took a vote on a resolution, but if they choose, it was not a binding resolution, as we know, it was just a resolution. If they choose to say, thanks for your resolution, we still want to bring the line up here, we're going to be up there next Tuesday, please have your city engineer and staff out there because we're going to talk about the curb cut or the property or a variance or that just gets weird or awkward. And so they went through that as a kind of a pro to that approach, and ultimately said that would cost more time for the project and more money for the project. So it's a very good presentation, I think, from the Met Council staff on the project, which led to a discussion of, options. One option is to continue as planned. One option is to reroute, and a couple of different presentations they put forward. Now, they have had very little time as a staff on the project to really get into too much planning on the routes, but they did some good work. So stopping it at Maplewood Mall was an option, and then running feeder buses into White Bear Lake to pick people up and get them down there to take advantage of it. And then also a route, because our resolution was very specific, don't encroach on White Bear Lake at all. And I hope I didn't get out of line. I don't think I did, saying that, because the other option was to go through White Bear Lake essentially to the Berkeley Road stop as planned, which in order to get to Berkeley Road, which is in Vadnais Heights, I think you do have to, right?
Through Berkeley Road up to County Road E, which that was the Vadnais stop.
Right, but there's.
Berkeley is in White Bear.
Well, Berkeley is in White Bear. Okay, so that this other route was like, well, if we weren't going to stick to the letter of the resolution and no White Bear Lake at all, then that would have worked. But I voiced support for that, and I hope I didn't overstep. But I think part of what's going to happen in the future is representing the city on this corridor management committee, getting feedback from you all and from the community on the future of this project. So another route was Berkeley and then up to Vadnais, County Road E across to 35E, and then down around 694, or Willow Lane. They started workshopping it right there, and then they had to stop because there's a lot of engineering that's got to get done. So,
in other parts of the city.
bottom line, we meet again in June to vote to suspend the locally preferred alternative route. So that's the next action item if this advisory group does that. Looks like they're going to. And then after that, that gives them kind of the green light to start planning new options to the route. The other thing I did offer on the discussion was, a lot of people have told me in this process, maybe you guys too, that they should stop it at Maplewood Mall and run buses up to White Bear Lake to pick people up. And that's essentially what they're planning to do. So I voice support for that concept because I have heard that from lots of people. There'd be fewer buses. They'd be, well, I don't know if they'd be smaller, because I think as we were headed, you think they'd be smaller? Okay, that's what they said. So anyway, that's the future. I'll continue representing.
Aren't they to the exact same bus?
Well, I think a lot of it's up in the air, honestly. I think a lot of it has to yet to be planned. Routes, for these feeder buses, size, all that, route, how many times a day. I think that's all up for design and redoing after we suspend the locally preferred alternative route. So I feel like they're listening. The group in April 29th was listening. It feels like the Met Council is listening. I had a very good conversation with the Met Council chair. And I voiced that I feel listened to. So that's my little report.
Oh, thanks, Bill. I appreciate the report. I would just add that, before we speculate too much on the who, what, and when of what would be changes, as I understand it right now, it's just we're encouraged that the Met Council is actually responsive to us, listening to a community that says they don't want it. I remain steadfast in my opposition to the project, and I look forward to continuing to work with the Met Council to amend it in a way that makes us happy and makes those other communities that may want it happy as well. So we'll just keep plugging along.
There's other key people involved in this. Commissioner Reinhardt, very much involved in this discussion and decision, and our Met Council rep, Sue Vento, also very much involved. So,
very good. Thank you for that report. I don't think we have anything else on the agenda, so with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
Mr. Mayor.